Hey there, just doing a little video on the cell phone for a change of pace instead of my regular camera. Just to see, I really want to get a sense for the quality and also to see if this works as a format. Sometimes in a pinch, it's good to grab the cell phone and just make a little video. So waiting for the football game, hasn't started yet. But while I'm waiting, I thought I would do a Not So Sunday Ramblings. And there's a couple of different little things I wanted to talk about, and some of that is going to play into the mail week this week, or the mail day video this week. I'm kind of excited about it because I did get a ComC order and a couple of other things that are starting to play into that little change in terms of the focus of certain parts of the collection that I referenced previously. But I'll get into more of that in a little bit. Part of it, though, was brought about by reading this book. And I mentioned it earlier in a previous video. So this is Confessions of a Baseball Card Addict. I read through it. It's a very light read. I think it's only like 160, 170 pages. I will say it's not bad. There are a couple of things, though, if I can offer a critique. So this would be, it's not a criticism, it's a critique. It is kind of one of those Amazon, you can have like print on demand books, I think. The only thing that I would have said, though, is it's like a mini memoir and trying to give some tips for people about collecting. The only thing that I would have probably included, though, is it's entirely text, which is fine, you know. And like I said, it's not very long, and the fonts are pretty big, so you can zip through this pretty fast. The only thing is, if you're going to do like a mini memoir thing, I would have included some pictures inside of it. It references a bunch of things like meeting Jose Canseco and a bunch of things that led to the collector building a very large Jose Canseco super collection. And maybe at another time I'll talk about my lack of affinity for the word super collector. I'm not a big fan of it, but that's a conversation for another rambling video. The point is, though, he built a very impressive collection, and that's part of the story that goes into the book itself. But the thing is, at the same time, it would have been kind of cool maybe to see a couple of examples of a few of the cards, or maybe at some point if there had been a display, or again under the same vein, if there had been some pictures again from that visit with Jose Canseco, because it's referenced here, and then he makes reference to his website where there are pictures of some of the stuff that we're talking about, including the Jose Canseco collection. Well, include some of it in here. Aside from that, though, if you are curious about it, I would say get the Kindle version because you're just going to be reading it anyway. So at least the Kindle version, I think you save a little bit of money. So that would be my kind of little review of that book. Like I said, not bad. But one specific thing, though, that it did kind of lead into is I've been on a little bit of a slant that has been kind of leading me more towards the 1990s cards, specifically ones that I had been collecting when I was younger. And part of that was the Essential Credentials podcast, which along the same time that I'm reading this came into play. And they focus largely on 90s cards, 90s baseball specifically. But that brought my focus into the area where I used to collect. And even though I collected baseball and I collect vintage baseball and a lot of other things, the big collection growing up that I had, being in Canada, was hockey. And that era between about 1995, when I really started collecting my Mike Modano PC at that time, which I still do. Like I've mentioned before, I'm closing in on a quarter of a century collecting one player, which is weird. But that'll be a different conversation. But the thing is, so from about that 95 period to 97, 98, which for me was my favorite year, bar none, end of story, 97, 98 was my favorite year of collecting in any capacity. I love the sets that were coming out at that time. And I think from what I've seen, the same holds true for like baseball, and it holds true for basketball, and it holds true for a lot of other sports that I wasn't collecting at the time. But 97, 98 hockey cards for me was the high watermark. It was the apex. There have been some really great stuff that has been produced since then, but nothing matched quite the creativity and the different, the variety. Because at that time, and like I said, at some point I'll do a video where I'll showcase some of the 90s Modano cards that I have, because it's the player collection that I have that can show a representation of that era, because I have a bunch of cards from that time period. And I'll actually showcase maybe a couple during this video. But the point is, in that time period, you had Topps was coming back the following year. They came back to hockey in 98, 99. But in 97, 98, you had Upper Deck. You had Pinnacle. You had Leaf. You had Well, I think those were the three main brands, but they were producing a lot of sub-products underneath because Leaf and Pinnacle and Pacific was another one that was out there at that time too, because they entered the hockey market in 97, 98. So you had Pacific producing all these weird, wacky, out-of-the-box sets. Upper Deck was producing some good stuff, and then you had Leaf and Pinnacle producing sets that were unlike anything else that came out at the time, and some of it that hasn't come out since. Other sets that have been brought back, from the dead at that time. It was a really creative era where I think it felt like they were really trying stuff because there was enough competition there where you couldn't afford to produce the exact same stuff that everybody else was doing because you get lost in the shuffle completely because there was some wild stuff. Now, part of all of this comes, kind of looking back at that Medano collection I've been building. And it was weird because the way I've collected the Medano has been the same the whole time, but it's had, ebbs and flows. And there were lots of times where I would accumulate a lot of stuff, and then times where it would slow down. But it was a constant. Throughout my whole collecting, it has been something where I've always picked up more and more Medanos. And for the last couple of years, I focused strictly on the autograph ones because I had my goal of getting to 100 certified Mike Medano autographs. And a couple of months ago, I achieved that. And that was a goal for this year, and we got there. And the thing is, after that, it kind of plateaued. Now, I was still getting Medano cards in, but there was no rhyme or reason. The focus, I lost the focus of it because at that point, it's like, okay, well, I have been trying to achieve this specific thing. Now what? And a lot of these, the podcasts and everything, thinking back on the 90s, kind of made me think about that in the sense that that was the time period that was my personal favorite. It was the time when that Dallas Stars team was the best that it would be. 97, 98, they were great. 98, 99, they won the Stanley Cup. 99, 2000, they got to the Stanley Cup and went to Game 6. That was the high watermark of the franchise, and then my favorite player. And that team, especially because in this past year, two of the elected people for the Hockey Hall of Fame were on that Stanley Cup team. You had Sergei Zubov and Guy Carbonneau, who amongst a bunch of other players were part of that team, along with Medano and Darian Hatcher and Jamie Langenbrunner. And it's funny because I can probably name more players of the 98-99 Dallas Star team than I can from the current iteration. By far, without question. Because I'll watch the odd game here and there, but I'd struggle to name 5 players on the team. Whereas at that time, I knew that team cold because I had been watching them, and I watched that triple overtime game in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final of 98-99 when they won the Stanley Cup. And then they had a replay years later on CBC, and then I got sucked back in, even though I knew exactly what was going to happen, and it was triple overtime, and I didn't need to watch it again, and it was on late, but I watched it anyway. And that's kind of how that worked. So, part of the inspiration, though, is it led me to go back and look at the old collection, because I still had it. And the reclamation that I had a couple of videos back also kind of pushed. All these things have been pushing me back in that same direction of looking back at what I already had. So what I've actually did is I went and I started resorting everything. And the other thing I needed to do is I needed to catalog it because I had lost track. I've been tracking those Medano autographs because I was trying to achieve this goal. But having achieved this goal, I lost track of how much was in the collection. And I was pretty sure, I was confident, that I had about 1,200 cards. That was what I thought I had, because that's kind of the number I had in my head. Now, mind you, I definitely sold off chunks of cards over time, even though I've still been accumulating a bunch of them. But that was the number I had in my head. Well, I set it up and put it into Beckett, and Beckett Collection, my organization or whatever, I forget what the thing's called. I think it's just their card collecting tool, whatever it is. But the thing is, I went and inputted it in, and now there were a couple of cards that I have that are not on their list, so I included them. And I had just over 1,100 cards. And my reaction to that was, I was kind of annoyed, to be honest with you. I was like, how dare you? I was looking at my binders in my box. Now, the other thing, and I'll show you now, I've already been rambling for a while, and I haven't shown you anything. So one of the things I did was I started loading a bunch of the cards into boxes like this. So I've got this box here that has a bunch of stuff, and I'll actually show you a couple of things as I keep babbling. So I've got this one, and I've got another one where basically one side is completely filled up. And that was good because I amalgamated a bunch of other little boxes that have been holding these cards for years. And then the other thing I did was I went through the binders, and I was counting everything up in there, checking it out and cataloging it. And I was getting kind of nostalgic looking back at some of those old cards. So as I'm talking, let me show you a couple of things here. I think I've shown this card already a little while ago, but this is a private stock patch. So hopefully that light's okay. This was okay, though. You got a 3-color patch going on there. This is numbered 417. numbered to way too high, to be honest. Some of those years, Pacific tried to do stuff, but they might have tried a little too hard. This one I like, though. This is a retro game used jersey stick. So that's from the early 2000s, 2002, 2003. That was a Parkhurst set where they went for a very retro design. That's pretty cool. But the point is that as I started going through it, I started seeing a bunch of cards that I hadn't looked at in years. And I was kind of excited about it because I was a big fan of those cards back then. This one's a nice one. This one's Dual Link Sweaters with Mike Ribeiro. So this is kind of from the dark era of Dallas where, the teams were good, but they just could never get over the hump. So Medano was still there. This is from 2008, 2009. So this is right towards the end of Medano's career. And the thing is, for a Hall of Fame player, Medano is actually really inexpensive to collect for. Which is great for me, because I still collect. And I still enjoy it. This one's pretty good. That's a signature puck. Kind of hard to see, but the gold ink on that little puck design, insert, and it's a thick card too. It's pretty ridiculous. These cards are not expensive at all. It's actually really crazy, especially when you get stuff like from the Cup, which was a really expensive brand. You had to pay a lot for these packs. Look at that, signature patches. This one's out of 99. It's got a nice little patch there. It's pretty good stuff. But the point was, as I said, one of the problems that I ran into as I started looking at it was that even though I like cards like those ones that I just showed you, that 95 to 98, 99 period was by far my favorite. So as far as focus is concerned, and that's something that I'm probably going to include in my year-end collecting goals, is that I went and printed out a checklist of all the stuff from 95 to 99 that I still had. It came out to just about, not including 99, 2000, which I may throw in later on, it came out to almost exactly 600 cards when I took off some of the one-of-ones, because one-of-ones are redundant. Either you have them or you don't. But about 600 cards, and of that I have about 330. So a little over half. So a very simple collecting goal for me, I think, is going to be to try to get that under triple digits. So if I can get that under 100, that'd be a pretty good collecting goal. And then the other thing is, I'm not going to go back to trying to collect all the Medanos, because I know part of the reason I got out of that was that it was just not possible. But enough time has gone by, and I know a lot of the Medano super collectors, in quotation marks, have kind of gotten out of the game. It's, to be honest, it's a lot cheaper to pick up a lot of the nice high-end Medano cards that I couldn't get back then. But I really want to focus on that 90s period because, to be honest, that was my personal favorite, and I think it's one that can be done. Now this here is an example of me being an idiot. This is what happens when you either don't have a checklist or you make a checklist and you don't pay attention to it. So this is, again, a Signature Patches Medano card from the Cup, from a different year than the one I just showed you. So that's a very nice patch, a nice clean autograph. So this is from 2011, 2012, the Cup. Really good. Now, remember that image because it's going to look a lot like this one. Also from the Cup, also 2011, 2012. It's the exact same year. Two different patches. Trying to get used to using the cell phone camera here a little bit. There you go. I think you get the idea. So one of these is 22 or 30. So there are 35 copies of these, and I have 2 of them. And this was not remotely intentional. This was just me being an idiot and not paying attention to my own checklists. You would think that a card out of 35, I'd be able to keep track of that, and apparently not. One more here I'll show you. So this is a dual enshrinement with Patrick Kane, dual autograph, again from the Cup. Some really nice cards from this era as well, especially that early 2000s and that mid-2000 period. And then Cup Geography. Anything where we're using the paint pen, that's nice. And if you like your shiny cards, there you go. Got a nice refractor thing going on. That's cool. And the lighting here is helping. It's actually playing pretty well. But the point that I'm trying to make, I think overall in kind of a long rambling video, is that it kind of reinvigorated me. And I think from time to time in the hobby you need that. Because there is a reason you started collecting in the first place. Whatever it is that you collect. If it's sets or if it's vintage. I collect vintage still because I enjoy the stories and things related to the cards. But with the Medano card collection, the story is really my fandom of the team. And kind of watching the player play and, get better. Because I followed, like I said, Medano from 95 through to the end of his career. Induction into the Hockey Hall of Fame. And now in his post-playing career, the reality is, there's nothing more he can do. He's done everything he can do. 550-odd goals, highest scoring American ever in terms of goals and points. So all that's done. There's nothing more. This one's a nice one. I wish it wasn't a sticker, but these are actually out of 10. It's a jersey auto. And again, in the game and be a player, it'd be nice if you guys would have numbered these things. You wouldn't know it's out of 10 if you didn't know it was out of 10. But the reality is that as time went on, I kind of lost a little bit of focus. I think once I realized I couldn't have the complete collection, or that it wasn't realistic to try to keep up, because I didn't have the pockets to be able to play that game. Once that became clear, it kind of took a little bit of the steam out of the collection. So I kind of stalled. I reached a point where I have 1,100 cards, which is a lot of cards. And it's 1,100 unique. I'm not counting duplicates like that, those two patches I showed you. But the thing is, that's a lot of cards by any standard metric. And I think Medano has about 5,500. So I've got approximately 20%. But there's no reason I can't put a dent in that. Especially if I start doing that mid to late 90s run that I'm going to be aiming for. And some of the mail days that are going to be upcoming, I think are going to reflect that, because I've really started to hit that checklist hard. So one more I'll show you here before I finish up. So this is superlative plus number. So this is out of 9. Now this one they did a little bit of a better job. First of all, that's really nice with the patch and the autograph. And anything where it's a hard signed autograph is always a bonus. And that looks clean. But you put on the back that's the silver version out of 9. And it's number 9 of 9. Jersey number. But the thing is, at least you know what that's out of. And it's hand numbered. That's fine. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Card manufacturers never want to make things easy. And I think that I've shown this one before, but this is a really nice one. Superlative. So that's from the 98-99 Cup team. Speaking of which, so there you go. You got Zubov, who went to the Hockey Hall of Fame. They don't have Guy Carbonneau in this one, but Nieuwendyke's already in the Hall of Fame, I believe. Brett Hall, Ed Belfour. So actually, 5 out of 6 of these guys, everybody except Daryl Sydor, is in the Hall of Fame. That's a pretty good card then. It was a pretty good card before, and that Medano patch is nice. It's pretty sweet. 5 out of 6 guys in the Hall of Fame from that one team. That's pretty good. So anyway, maybe the question that I would pose to you, because it's been a long video. If you're still watching, I appreciate it. Thanks very much. Really, like I said, I just wanted to kind of make a video and talk about a couple of things. The next couple of mail days are going to start reflecting that. I really am going to hit that checklist hard and try to put a dent in it. And they're not expensive. That's what I think is the most exciting thing to me about going back and kind of nostalgically thinking back on it. Now, some of them are just flat out hard to get. I will say that I tried to get one, and I'll tell you what it is because I missed out on it. I couldn't manage it. There was a 97-98 Black Diamond Run for the Cup, and I'll see if I can get you a picture. I'll still edit this video, and I'll try to put a picture in there for you of the auction that ended. And Beckett has this card. It's a Run for the Cup. It's basically like a see-through Acelette card. I don't think I'm pronouncing that correctly. But basically, you got the see-through image of Medano in it, and it's got a little gold border around it. And what happens is those ones were inserted in 96-97 Black Diamond, and they were now numbered to 100. Which doesn't sound like it's that rare, but in the mid-late 90s, those were actually still really tough to pull, especially for that Black Diamond set. And the thing is, Beckett has it at $80, but that thing comfortably blew past that. It went for more than double that. I think it was 150 US, and it came out to like 200 Canadian. And I wasn't prepared or able to make a strong bid on that one. That one wasn't happening, at least not right now. But it was interesting. There is no doubt that there are still some really nice ones out there, but the supply of a lot of that stuff has dried up because a lot of it has ended up in collections, and once it ended up in collections, it kind of got buried away. Or it ended up with people, with collectors like me, who basically have boxes of the stuff, and it's not going anywhere. I'm not planning on selling it. I did my little sell-offs already, and now I have to deal with the annoyance of having to kind of go back and go get some of these things. Even some of the stuff that would seem pretty straightforward. That's a nice card. Not super valuable, but nice. Kind of like it. But the point is that I'm excited about getting back into it, so I'm not going to show off everything in there because there's a lot still left in that box. But it is going to be fun to start putting some of that back together and to have a little bit of focus back in the hobby. So my question maybe to you would be, is there something that you used to collect? Because if you're watching these videos, you're probably a collector. Is there something that maybe you used to collect that maybe is worth revisiting? Something that you haven't thought about in a long time, or that maybe you're still collecting but not with the same passion or enjoyment that you did before, that you think might be worth a revisit? So that's a question maybe I would throw out to you if you're checking out this video and if you made it to this far. So I think that's it. That's enough. I've been talking for long enough. I will have a pickups video, and there's a bunch of cool stuff for a bunch of the player collections that I'm excited to show off, because as soon as I get to show it off, then I get to put it back in the boxes, and then I can start organizing, and I clear a little space out on my desk. So that'll be exciting. So probably Friday night I'll record that just so that I can get the video out there. So with all that said, thanks very much for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll catch you in the next one.